In this video, I will talk about the iterate node, which is similar to for each, but also a little bit different. So because this is a sequential loop, as opposed to for each, which is a parallel one, this iterate node will allow us to use feedback ports. So I'm going to try and explain this in the most simple configuration I can think of. So I'm creating these ports, turning them to floats. We're not limited to float data types, of course, but this is just what I'm going to use. And then I will turn them into feedback ports. So I right click on either one of them, and I'm just selecting the matching port. And I'm just going to rename this in and out. And here, basically, we can see our input or a starting input value. So let's just turn this to 10 and say we have 5 iterations. So because we're not doing anything inside the loop, we're just outputting the value and feeding it back to itself. We shouldn't expect any new values. So if I output this and I set a watch point, I'm going to get 10. So that shouldn't be surprising. Now let's just simply increment by 1. So what's going to happen now? 5 iterations, we're starting at 10. So 10's coming here, getting incremented, so the output will be 11. And that output will then be fed in to the next iteration. So we have 11, turns into 12, and then 12 will be round tripping back to here, and so on. So really, we should see 15 at the end. And that's the basic idea now. As we can see, this is outputting a single number, but what if I do want an array of values? So each individual iteration I want as a value. So I can plug this here. We can see we get an error down here, and if we hover over the node, we can see that it's saying it's not an iteration target or a state port. So what that means is here we've got a state port, but this isn't either state port or iteration target. So if you remember from for each, the output is automatically an iteration target, and what that means is it's just going to put every single iteration into an array, or every value per iteration. So we just turn this to an iteration target. And now we get this output array. And if I print this, we've got our individual values here. Cool. Okay, let's do something slightly more interesting. I'm going to delete this, get back to the previous configuration. Don't need this output. And let's say what we want to do is we have an array of random values. Let's make it 10, give it some seed, and print this here. Okay, so here's my values between 0 and 1. And let's say I want to use my iterate loop to filter this array. And I want to filter out all the values that are bigger than 0.5. So put this in here. And let's think about this. So first of all, I'm going to turn this into an array feedback loop. So simply put this to array, have the same thing here. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this to an iteration target. And remember that from for each, if we do this, we're getting for each iteration, each individual value to deal with inside the loop. And because of that, we can delete this guy here. And it's just going to run as many times as I've got elements. So in this case, 10 times. So this is an empty array feeding back to itself. And we just want to, every time we find a value that's bigger than 0.5, we just want to append it to this array. And in order to append something to an array, we use this build array node. So I plug this here, and whatever I want to append, I'm just going to plug in below. So now we need to check if this value is bigger than 0.5. So greater, and if this value is greater than 0.5. Now I'm going to show you what I initially thought I was going to do, and then I'm going to show you how to do it better. So I thought I'll just plug this into the true case, and then plug this into here, and then if it's true, it's going to append it. If not, it's not going to append anything. But if I print this, we're going to get this kind of doing the right thing, because all these guys are bigger than 0.5, but it's always appending 0 as well. And that's, I think, just how this if node works in Bifrost. You can't just tell this false case to do nothing, because it has to be a float. It has to match the other data type. So the way around this is to, instead of plugging the individual floats into the if node, we're using the arrays themselves. So I am going to build this array like this, then use that for the true case. However, for the false case, I'm just going to use the previous version of the array, and plugging that in, we get exactly what we wanted. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about for the iterate node. Cheers.